It is my great pleasure to welcome to this Zoom call the delightful Rachel Hoffman. Rachel's a casting director with Telsey and Company in New York City, and her current and upcoming Broadway shows and tours include Diana, MJ, which stands for Michael Jackson, Frozen, and Come From Away. Previous Broadway and touring productions include Beetlejuice, Escape to Margaritaville, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, An American in Paris, The Sound of Music, Memphis, Bring It On, Hands on a Hard Body, First Date, Rock of Ages, Spider-Man, and How the Grinch Stole Christmas. Rachel also has numerous off-Broadway and regional credits, including the Alliance Theater's very own Becoming Nancy. She cast for Williamstown Theater Festival, New York Stage and Film, La Jolla Playhouse, the Goodman Theater, St. Louis Muni, and Paper Mill Playhouse. She previously served on the board of the Casting Society of America and is currently a faculty member at Ball State University, at the University of Michigan Summer Musical Theater Program, and the nonprofit and my alma mater, Broadway Dreams. And looking at her incredible breadth of work, I'm reminded of how exhaustingly busy Rachel is, and her days must still be, even though we're quarantined, which is why I welcome an even heartier fashion, Rachel Hoffman. Hi.
Hi. This is exciting.
I was saying to Rachel earlier, one of the things I love about these so much, about these in conversations, in addition to spending this time with all of these incredible local artists that are on this call, is that I have an opportunity to check in with people that I don't see that frequently because I don't live in New York anymore.
Yeah.
And you in particular, I'm so comfortable in conversation with you because we've known each other for such a long time.
True.
And I also love having an opportunity to say, I just think you are incredible. I think you're really, really good at what you do. And all of the respect that you have in this business is so well-deserved. And you're also a lovely human.
Thank you. That's very kind of you. I try. I do my best. I have my good days and my bad days like all of us.
Well, yeah. I mean, I have already shared with people what I feel about my roots. Also, my internet is terrible down here. So I'm sorry about the delay, everybody. I have a feeling we're going to have a lot of questions when we get to Q&A. So I just want to launch in with my questions. You know, I do some extra Google research. I didn't have to do that much with you because I have known you for quite some time. But you were a BFA musical theater major at the University of Michigan. Mm-hmm. And that is, I believe, you originally, that's what you wanted to do.
Yeah,
right?
I moved to New York as an actor. Yeah, totally. Yeah. I got my degree in musical theater and I came here to be an actor. Yep.
And so when was the seed planted as far as casting?
Yeah, so pretty quickly. I graduated in 1999, did a showcase here, got an agent, started auditioning. And, you know, back in the 90s, Amanda, you'll remember this, we didn't have cell phones back then. We had service numbers. And, you know, if you got an appointment for something, an email just wasn't email existed, but it wasn't the main way of communicating. And so if you got an appointment for something, you know, you called your service number, and if it rang, you didn't have any messages. But if it didn't ring, you knew you had messages, and you put in your little 4-digit code and you listened to your messages and you got the information about your auditions. Well, I was frequently being called in by a gentleman named Dave Clemens, who, Amanda, you'll remember, but he, at the time, you know, he would leave messages for me on my service saying, you know, I like the information about the audition, but he always says, "This is Dave Clemens. I'm Frank Wildhorn's casting director." At the time, there was a show called The Civil War running on Broadway. And so anyway, I would go to the audition, and, you know, much like when you're coming in for Telsey and Company, you're typically not coming in for Bernie Telsey. You're coming in for one of the rest of us, you know, that are working on the different projects. Unless it's like a final callback for something or a big movie or whatever, it's typically somebody else. Anyway, so it was a Wednesday afternoon, and my mom was in town. We went to the TKTS booth in Times Square, and Civil War was up. And I was like, this casting director that keeps calling me in cast this show. Let's go see it. So we bought tickets to Civil War. We went. Dave was credited as casting director / vocal director. And I thought that was fascinating because I was like, wow, a casting director who knows that much about music, that they, wear that hat and they serve that purpose too. How awesome. And then I flipped a little further in the program, and Dave had a second bio because he was in the show too.
Yeah.
So 22-year-old me, right out of college, was like, oh, that's what I'll do. I'll cast the Broadway show, and I'll vocal direct the Broadway show, and I'll be in the Broadway show. Where's Dave Clemens? Let me talk to him and see how he made that happen. So I waited for him at the stage door. I chatted with him a little bit. He was just at the point, he was just transitioning out of performing. He had been a performer for, 15 years. He was, had done it and was not, he talks about, like when 6 o'clock would roll around and it was time to start getting ready to go to half hour, he would be like, oh, I gotta go do a show. And he realized that was a shift in, in who he was. And so he sort of refocused and thought about new possibilities, and kind of fell into the casting thing because he knew Frank for a lot of years and would always find people to record demos for Frank. Anyway, long story short, he said, drop off some pictures and resumes for me at the stage door this week, because he didn't have an office space yet. So I did, and I wrote a thank you note, and I said, thank you for talking to me. Thank you for the auditions. I'd love to pick your brain about how you got to where you are, because I'm interested in other sides of the business. Yeah. Now, I wasn't like, I want to be a casting director, but I was always one of those people who had their hands in lots of different things, like through my whole life. I was, I did this and that, one of those annoying people probably to some. And he was having lunch with Brent Wagner, who at the time was the head of the musical theater department at Michigan, like the next week or something. And he asked Brent if I would be a good person to ask about interning. And Brent said yes. And Dave called me and asked if I would be interested. And I was, and I did. I thought, what better way to learn the other side of things than to be in the room and see how it all works. And so I did. And his business was growing. I was the only other person there, really. It grew, and I grew with it. And it sort of, there became a point in time when, there wasn't a moment that I was like, I'm done being an actor and now I'm just a casting director. But I began to feel much more creative, matching performers to material and visions of a director or a writer or a creative team. Matching all of that up felt more creative to me than auditioning, which really is your job as an actor. I mean, you get the job. Even if you get the job as an actor, you still have to be auditioning all the time, because you don't know when it's done. If you get in a Broadway show, it could last a long time, but more often than not, it doesn't last a long time. Or if you get the regional gig, great, you have a job for a few months, but you have to keep interviewing for more jobs because you need to know what's coming next. So anyway, I felt more creative matching everybody together, and the business grew. I grew with it. I worked with him for a little over 6 years, and then I joined Telsey about 15 years ago. Yeah.
I have so many questions and comments to get. And the first thing I want to say is that, what was it called? The answering machine? Like
answering service. Wasn't it your answering service?
I know, but it was like bells.
Oh, bells. There was a bells are ringing, or there was
something with bells. But I remember I would get so angry because I would have to spend a quarter in the payphone to check my messages. And it was always my mom. It would click, and I would get so excited, and she'd say, you don't ever call me. How are you? And I was like, oh my gosh, I just spent a quarter, and I thought it was someone telling me I got a call back or they want me to come in for something. So that was back in the day.
Who are not familiar with this, the whole point was you put the quarter in the payphone on the street, and if it rang, you knew there was no messages, you could hang up quickly and get the quarter back. Yes, that was the whole point. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's so sad.
Oh my God.
In hearing you talk about how you got into this, I'm reminded one of the many things I love about you is that there's not a bitter bone in your body. And I think, and this is not a comment to other casting directors. It really isn't at all. I think about myself, if I were to be in those rooms and have to be inside a lot of what I was a very anxious actor. I was extremely nervous auditioning. I was a terrible auditioner. So I would see that. I would really catch on to that in the room. And I think it can lead to a bit of an embitterment, and you are not like that. And I think it's a testament to your becoming a casting director because you knew what you said, which is that is where your creative engine was most alive.
Yeah.
You know? So to this conversation of the rooms, one of the things I always thought or caught onto, and I think I was right in thinking this, is that the secret sauce and really the unsung hero of the casting director is this perfect blend of one part mediator, negotiator, and one part kind of being the person that knew the most in the room, could think like a really good actor, could think like a really good director. When you first started to cast and you first entered these rooms, where did you fit on that spectrum? And maybe how has that changed as you've become so busy and so successful?
Oh man, this is a great question. We do wear a lot of different hats. I like to say that my job is to make everybody in the room feel like they're the most important person to me in the room. You know, everyone from the actor walking in to the director, to the producer who might be sitting in the back of the room, to the reader, to the accompanist, to, you know, like everybody has to feel like I've got them and I you know, that I'm there to support them. Right. And, in every way that I can. And so, you know, I feel like I'm veering off the question a little bit here. You know, we do wear a lot of different hats in a room, and it is our job to kind of, you know, make it all come together eventually. And that could be, you know, sometimes that is an easy thing to do. Sometimes it all falls together beautifully and people are on the same page. And sometimes it's, you know, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it really doesn't. And people can have wildly different thoughts and reactions, which is okay too. I mean, you know, art is subjective.
Yeah.
And, you know, one of the things, and I'll reiterate this at the end with one of the questions I know is coming up, but, you know, one of the big things that I learned when I started to be in audition rooms is if you don't get the job, if you don't get the callback, it has nothing to do with your talent. I mean, I remember, you know, when I first started, everyone who walked in the room was wildly talented and I couldn't believe it. And, you know, and maybe there was that part of me as an actor too going, I can't compete with this, or, you know, like just people were so good, but only one person could get the role. Right. So, and that's one of those things it's easy to forget, I think, sometimes as an actor, that it's easy to take personally because you're giving your all, you're giving all of yourself when you walk in. And then if you don't get the callback or if you don't get the role, it can feel personal. It can feel, I hate the word rejection because nobody is rejecting anybody. It's all about, you know, it's all about taste and all about what one person responds to and like what the vision of the creative team is in the room, you know?
Right.
I think I went off.
It's a real, no, you didn't. It's a real craft. I mean, it's a very singular talent, actually. It's different than all of the other, the job of the casting director is its own jam. And yes, it has hands in all of the various pieces, but it's also so silent in such a beautiful way. Mm-hmm. I don't know that everyone always sees that or knows that, especially when someone's really good.
Yeah.
And, in my fun over the weekend Google searching, I read that you highly recommend this documentary, Casting By, about the Hollywood casting director Marion Dougherty.
Marion Dougherty, yeah, she was in New York for a lot of years. Like she got her start in New York, and then was one of the big studio casting directors out in Los Angeles. But she was one of the people who really gave theater actors a chance on television film. Like, she would go see downtown shows. There are, legendary she was the one who, in The Graduate, she had seen Dustin Hoffman in a small off-Broadway play, and he stuck with her. And you learn about this in the documentary, and it's fascinating, the different people whose careers she really started. But if you looked at Dustin Hoffman when he was in his 20s, you wouldn't necessarily be like, that's the romantic lead of a Hollywood film. But Marion
Totally.
Doherty did. She started to see people differently, and she really was a champion for theater actors, for the trained theater people in the TV film world too. But she paved the way for a lot of us who are doing what we're doing now. And so anyway, it's a celebration of what casting directors do, and a history lesson. I like to say, we all are standing on the shoulders of who came before us, no matter what we're doing. And she certainly is one of those people whose shoulders I stand on.
Oh, I love that. I'd never heard of that documentary, so now that's on my.
Yeah, definitely. It's so fascinating. And I think it originally was an HBO thing, but I think it might be available on Netflix now also, or one of the other streaming services.
Yeah. So speaking of big breaks for people, I just think I'm just delighted by an opportunity to ask a question, knowing you are also such a wonderful human being. So you delight in success.
Oh, I do.
Right?
I like to see people succeed. Yeah.
What's an example of the person, or I'm sure you have many, but the one that stands out where the giving the opportunity to someone not only paved the beginning of the wonderful career for that person, but also you felt like you were very much a part of that. And I think, inside of it is maybe the bigger question, which is, all of these people that are on this Zoom call understand that it's not just the role that you're auditioning for when you're going in to see someone. Often someone is seeing, oh, I know right away, here are the reasons this person is not going to book this gig, but I have this other thing in mind that will down the road comes this fabulous phone call for that person.
Totally. I guess the one that sort of sticks out the most, because I was there, or at this moment sticks out the most. I could think of a lot of them, I'm sure, but what is probably Taylor Louderman in Bring It On, where she had come in. I had seen, because I went to the University of Michigan. I'm still very involved with their musical theater department. I produce their showcase here. I go back a lot of times. They're my alumni. They're my people. And so I was back. It was her freshman year of college there. And I was speaking to the intro to musical theater class that Brent Wagner was teaching. And I remember seeing her, and she's just went, in my mind, thinking like a casting person, I'm like, it's a baby Alicia Silverstone is what she,
Right.
And so, anyway, I just remember seeing her, and I think it was for a reading. It was a developmental thing before it came. It was before it went, actually, maybe it was for the Alliance, because it started after New York. It did a regional production at the Alliance. That was its actual first production. And I think we were having trouble casting the role of Skylar, which eventually went to Kate Rockwell. And I remembered seeing Taylor, and I'm like, she looks like this kind of person. She came in for Skylar initially, and she was great, but it ended up in Kate ended up getting it. And, but, she stuck in our minds, and I mean, me and Andy Blankenbuehler and Alex Lackamore, she was just, she was compelling and really good, and so great. Anyway, then it had the production at the Alliance, and then some rewrites happened, and then there was plans. It was for a national tour. It started out at CTG in LA, and we went back into auditions for the lead role of Campbell. The girl doing it at the Alliance during rehearsal broke her foot, and the understudy went on for the Alliance run, and we were going back into auditions. And so Taylor at that time was a sophomore at Michigan, and I sent her the Campbell material, and towards the end of her sophomore year, I always go back and talk to the seniors, before their showcase. And when I was going back, the auditions were coming up like in May at some point. And so I emailed her, and when I sent her the stuff, and I said, I'm going to be there. Do you want to like go through material? Because at that point I had been in the room a lot with Andy and Alex and the team, and had an idea of what they did and didn't respond to, and how to kind of help, which, I do that all the time. But in this one in particular, this is a girl who at the time was 19 years old or 20 years old, whatever she was, and probably hadn't been in that many audition rooms like this. And so we went through all the material. She was unbelievably prepared. Like, I was like, wow, and little tweaks and such. But so we went over it in Michigan, and then she flew to New York, I think the next week, and, auditioned again, and they flew her back one more time, and she booked it. But kind of watching her go from, an 18-year-old freshman coming in a room and doing a good job on the Skylar stuff, but like, and then booking the lead and taking that responsibility on. And, it was a lot. It was a big, a big ask of somebody at that age with not so much. So that's one that sticks out in my head, and watching her succeed, and now watching her career. And she's an interesting one to talk to also. I think there was a time where she, like everybody has their ups and downs. And there was a time when Taylor was like, maybe I just need to get out of this. And then she booked, Mean Girls, or I'm sure it was somewhere in between, but I think she had a moment, like all actors do. I think she had a moment of, what am I doing? And feeling like, but and then things aligned.
Yeah.
And watching that, that success, and watching her really come into her own as a leader and as a leading lady. So
yeah, it's so satisfying.
Yeah.
To the question of diverse and equitable representation on stage, I mean, you more than anyone see the structures and changes that are being put into place.
Mm-hmm.
How do you think we're doing?
I think we got to do better is my, I think we have to do better. We always have to do better. We always have to be getting better at it. I think, for a while, I think way back, theater was sort of ahead of the game. And then I feel like theater maybe fell a little bit behind the game. And I think there's been, just for anybody listening or who's going to be watching this, the CSA, which is the Casting Society of America, which is our professional organization. It's not a union, but it's those of us, you have to have a certain level of work to get into it. But most, it's our professional organization. Anyway, there's a huge push towards what can we do to create more opportunity for more actors, and has been for a number of years, but just from different communities, from different ethnicities, to gender identity, to disability or ability, to older actors, to deaf actors, to and trying to reach out to and be a part and get to know those communities, and what do you need, what are we doing, what can we do better, even like the way that you describe or write a breakdown. Like you have to be, there are things that we might have in the past said or not thought about how it might read to somebody, in a different community. And so we're trying to, just even trying to be more careful about that. A big thing is we need more representation in the casting community too. We need more people of color. We need more people of different abilities. We need, and that is, there's a push to create more opportunity on that side of things too, because let's face it, casting, you don't study casting. You can't get a degree in casting. The way to learn it is to do it, is to get an internship or do it. And internships are like, they ultimately cost money to do, and so anyway, there's a lot of movement towards trying to create more opportunity, both for actors and on our side of things, for people in the casting world to have opportunity.
Yeah, and it's up to the producers to produce those shows as well.
Yeah.
The responsibility is all of ourselves personally and all of ourselves, our work.
Yeah.
We spend our work day
Yeah.
and where everyone goes.
Absolutely.
Because you might have more than 5 for each of these, I'm going to go ahead and ask you this question about do's and don'ts. I think it's useful for everyone to hear this. And I think knowing you and knowing your experience, and also that you were an actor, I think the question of here are some tried and true, everything has an exception, but when you walk in the room,
Yep.
Best stab at tried and true things to do and things perhaps not to do or to try not to do,
Right.
as far as the audition process.
Cool. Who knows if I'll have 5 or not? I'm just going to talk a little bit here. And I mean, for what you need to do, you have to be prepared. And I'm sure you've heard that from almost anybody who you've asked this question to. But the preparation is the big one. You know, it's your shot, and have worked on the material, spent time with the material, put thought into who the character is and what's happened. If you have access to the play, have read the play. If there's music and that goes with it, you know that music. You don't have to be memorized, but you know, everybody's got their own personal, you know, preference when it comes to, meaning actors. Do they want to be off book? Do they not? I would rather have you interacting with the reader, and you know, if you still have to look at the page, great. I'd rather have you playing the scene and be able to be in the scene than have you worried about thinking about what line comes next rather than living in the character.
Yeah.
So, you know, preparation is huge. I also know that, you know, at least in you know, in New York, sometimes you can get a big old packet of material that can be overwhelming, and sometimes you don't get that audition until 2 days before, and sorry about that, and it's a lot to work on. And so I think, do your best. The casting director always knows if you got the appointment, you know, recently, and if you've only had the material for a certain amount of time. We are there to protect you in the room. We want you to be at your best because we're the ones who invited you in. You will make us look good. You know, we need you to look good. We want you to look good. We want to do everything we can to celebrate you and to put you at your best. You know, everybody behind the table wants you to be the one who gets the role. Then our job's done, you know. And I know it doesn't always feel like that. Different rooms have different energies and different people, just like different people have different energies. And sometimes you'll walk into a room and it'll feel awesome and friendly and amazing. And sometimes you'll walk into a room and it will feel cold and terrible. And I promise both feelings, whoever's behind the table still is hoping that you're the one to get the role.
Yeah.
So, you know, so that, know that, and I think that's powerful too. And all you can do is what you have control of. You know, all you can do is put the time in and the preparation in, and walk in and do your best, and then it's out of your hands. It really is. You know, if you get a note, take the note, think about it. I think, you know, receiving a note gracefully or listening and taking a note, there's an art to that. And so just be thinking about making sure you're listening and understanding, and not, yep. You know, like, just listen, take something in, take a beat, make sure you understand it, and then try again when you're receiving a note, I think is always helpful. What are don'ts? You know, I would be.
I hesitate to even put it this way, right? But
no, right. It's not even, you know, I think rule of thumb is don't shake the hands of people behind the table. And especially now in the world of coronavirus, I think that's going to be even more of a, like, let's not approach the table. We're all going to keep our safe distance. And it's not, and that's not because people aren't friendly, but I think it, you know, it is because health reasons for some people, and B, you know, it's, you know, sometimes there's space, you know, different people have different feelings about that. So I think it's always safe. You can say hi, you can be friendly without approaching somebody, you know, directly.
Yeah. And I think, and to that, Rachel, it, you know, my ickiness with like leading with a what do you not do really is in service of be okay not doing the following.
Yes. Yes.
I think everyone, I certainly did this. You're wondering, is my instinct right or not? And I think maybe having some guidance about that is just so
Yeah.
useful, because the more confident you are and the more you're living inside of your intuition and instincts, the better off the 10 minutes is going to be. Right?
Confidence is huge. Walking in and taking the room and knowing that they want you there and that it is your time, and like that you don't have to apologize, or there's some, sometimes people come in with this sort of apologetic and energy, like, thank you for having me, no, come in, be confident, do your job. Here's one: be ready to have control of what happens in the room. There are some directors that will say, let's start with this and then we'll go into this. Great. Can we start with it? They'll take control. There are some directors who say, what do you want to do? And it's fascinating to watch how that throws actors off.
Yeah.
It's fascinating to, what do you want me to do? I think for some directors, it's an unconscious test.
Yes.
It's an unconscious test of, if you have an answer ready, you know what, can I do this side and then can we go into this song? Then the director's like, okay, they've got a plan. When I have to deal with 12 other things in the rehearsal room, this person's going to be fine taking care of themselves with whatever we've worked on,
Yeah.
So be ready for that too. It's an interesting one when people when that really throws people off.
Yeah.
And be ready for anything. You never know who's going to be in the room. Often you get a list of who's going to be there, but you never know what they're working on next. And if there's extra time, what might happen later on. I remember way back when casting a workshop of a show it was called Last Dance, and it had a bunch of 70s music in it. And Phil McKinley was directing it.
Okay.
And the people were asked for, to bring a disco song in, and they sang the disco song. Phil's next project after that, he was directing The Most Happy Fella for New York City Opera. And if somebody was great and there was extra time, the women, he knew he needed like sopranos, totally different, style singing. And he would say, do you have a high soprano song that you could do, or a legit soprano song? He would ask for. It was fascinating then to watch how people responded to that. Most, obviously it wasn't what they were prepared to do in that room. It wasn't what they had been given. But the people who responded and were like, yeah, I've got that, and did it. I think he put 4 people on a list, and I was not the casting director of that project. Mark Simon, I think, was the casting director on that one. He kept a list of the people who could do it. He gave it to Mark. Mark called them in, and I think 2 people booked it from Phil just meeting them somewhere else, and they were able to successfully have a song. They had the song in their book, and they didn't say anything like, oh, my agent didn't tell me to prepare that. Your agent didn't tell you to prepare that. Your agent didn't know that he was going to ask for it. Neither did I, So I think just being ready for anything and being able to sort of roll with anything and not let it throw you off is always a good rule of thumb also, because you don't know. Is it Mel Brooks always used to ask people to tell a joke on in the producer's audition process, I think, and that threw people off early on, I think, too. And then and then people got wise and had jokes prepared.
Exactly. I mean, I'm in this conversation with you and I'm thinking, the things to be okay not doing. I feel like I could teach a class in that, from all the things that I did that I should not have done. Even looking back now, I cringe, like, thinking about that choice. And even in the moment, I question whether it was the right choice. So I'm sure everyone finds all of this very valuable. And I would even add, if I may, as much as you can, knowing who is behind the table. Like, if you're given the names of the folks behind the table, knowing who they are helps your confidence.
Absolutely.
It's one thing you can control, right, as far as the sea of faces. But I just was telling a coworker the story the other day about Stephen Schwartz was directing something. I mean, this is the dark age. This is like 1991 or something. It was a summer stock production of Gypsy. He was directing it. I sang a song from working. I had no idea that he wrote that song. And it was the Waitress song. And when it was over, I was, just beaming and 20 and a fool. And he kept saying, I love that song. I love that song. And I was like, yeah, I do too. I love that song. No idea that he even wrote it. Now, needless to say, I didn't book the job, and it's given us something to laugh about in the times that I've seen him since then, because he never forgot it. But what an insult to someone, do better, Amanda. Yeah, that was a misstep.
Well, but it's the thing, pointing out what you just said, the things that you do have control of. You do have control of knowing the writers, knowing their body of work, and
it gives you a silent confidence, because it's something you can know within the world of all of the unknowns.
Absolutely.
We're going to open up to questions. There's already some hands up. I'm going to ask this one. Oh, there's a lot of questions. So I'll ask it. I'll make it fast. I'm very curious, because you do teach so much, and I'm sure you go to senior showcases.
Yes.
And I'm hoping this is helpful to our Zoomers to hear about this. But I'm always curious. My experience in a BFA program, we learned very, very little about the business. Now these programs seem to really be focusing on preparing for a profession in this field. What have you seen as far as how the programs are growing, as far as curriculum and as far as goals and their missions, as they navigate development of craft and preparing for the business, which sure go hand in hand, but really on some days they are very separate conversations?
Yeah. This is a really interesting question. I'm involved with a lot of different universities. Well, the world of showcases and training programs, especially for musical theater, when I was graduating school, I think there was, 10, 15 schools that, had musical theater degrees, maybe only 10 of them showcased, or, it was not what it is now, where we are invited to 250 showcases in a season between January and June. And there's no physical way to do all of that. And here's the thing, it's turned into a world of, well, you have to have a showcase to attract students. I sometimes it's an interesting thing you think about, and the way that you phrase this question really makes me think even more about craft versus preparing you for the business. And I think craft is most important. I think it has to be at the base of everything. And I think, and I think you have to have that foundation before everything else. And so make sure you never lose focus on that. I feel like it's the equivalent of the marathon runner, like worried about which bar and which Gatorade drink there is going to get them through the race, rather than the pace runs and the long runs. You have to have the foundation there, and that always has to be, because that's the only thing that you're going to be able to go back to.
Right. And it's why you got in the business to begin
in the first place. Yep, totally.
So we have a lot of hands up here, which I'm so happy about. So first question is from Eddie.
Hey, Amanda, thanks so much for hosting. Really, really appreciate these. Loving these.
Yeah.
Rachel, I guess my question is, considering that video submissions have become, pretty prevalent and will probably become even more so in the future, how does a market like ours in the Southeast stay on your radar? I lived in Los Angeles, and I could go on open equity auditions all the time without an agent, submission, and ride that all the way to producers on their dime or my dime, depending on the production. So I guess it's, how do we stay in the loop, especially when the majority of Atlanta agents are really hyper-focused on, TV and film, right? And don't really have any idea what's going on. And then I know that obviously theater, like how you're saying, theater casting directors are bound to remember you way more for many things versus the fleeting, you know, TV rhythm, right? But how strongly do you consider talent that isn't in the room in the preliminary auditions, especially, you know, in context to video submissions?
Yep, totally. The answer is I need to find the best person for the role, and it doesn't, you know, it sort of doesn't matter where it starts. I actually think that this time is going to maybe shift things positively for those of you who are not in New York or LA or, you know, like one of the bigger markets. I think Atlanta's a pretty big market, but because we have had to get used to the world of video submissions and video auditions even more. And it's one of those things that, you know, sometimes people in my position or, you know, the directors and the writers or producers, you know, this virtual world is something that we're not going to be working in eventually when it comes to the theater. So people can be resistant to it, but they've been forced to get used to it. They've been forced to learn it, and technology is catching up, and people are figuring out how to do it successfully. I think, you know, Williamstown Theater Festival, we cast their summer season. They were in the middle of the auditions when this all shut down. But, you know, at the beginning of this, we were only going to be down for a month. And so they kept going and just moved everything to Zoom, because you can have the waiting room and you can have everybody together. And so I think it's going to shift in a positive way for you. And I think we're going to be relying on it more. And I think it's going to add an extra step. I think, you know, taping is going to become more of the norm. I don't think it will ever replace live auditions. I want to be careful that I'm not saying,
yeah, of course,
the future, but I think it might also add the extra step of, all right, Eddie did a tape for me. I liked Eddie's tape. I showed it to the associate team. They were like, oh, he's pretty good. So the next day that I have the associate team in the room, we're seeing people in New York, but the last hour of my session, we've got people Zooming in so that they don't have to, and that, so you actually get to interact with them a little bit and maybe give a note and do whatnot. And then, so they're not spending $500
right.
to fly to New York to be seen by the associate team, only to do, you know, one of the 4 sides and 16 bars of the 5 songs, you know, like you know how that goes. And so I think that this is going to add an extra step. I think it's going to actually ultimately create more opportunity later, because I think it's something that we've been forced to get used to and is going to become more the way of the future until things subside even more. You know, I think this coronavirus thing is part of our world for a long time now and will be. And so, and it's moving things forward for a lot of us, and hopefully it will benefit those of you on this call listening.
Yeah. Eddie, that's a great question. Thank you for that.
Thanks, guys.
Pamela Gold. Hi, Pamela.
Hi. I actually didn't raise my hand, but that's funny. But I guess I was meant to ask a question. I guess what I wanted to. So first of all, thank you. I love these calls, and thank you, Amanda, for hosting, and Rachel for being here. I'm just curious to know. I mean, your body of work is so impressive, and you know, and it's wonderful that a lot of the out of town opportunities for these pre-Broadway runs have been at the Alliance, and the Alliance has become known as this growing garden for the future of these shows. What I was going to ask, which I completely just lost my train of thought. I'm so sorry. Oh my God. Well, 2 things. First of all, sort of a follow-up to Eddie, in that in Atlanta, you really don't have an agent for theater. Agents don't make enough money from the theater in Atlanta. The Alliance is probably the highest paying theater in Atlanta. And so, first of all, how would you even go about getting an audition? I guess it's being called in perhaps through the Alliance casting director, but if it's for a show maybe that's not even going to be originating here, but it's going to be in New York, how do you get on your radar for that? And also, what percentage of the jobs that you book, and I'm sorry, I didn't do my research about all of your wonderful body of work except for what Amanda told us, how much television and film do you cast in comparison to theater projects?
Yeah. Okay, for the first one, I know there is a casting team at the Alliance that I know Jodie Feldman heads up, and so often she and I are working in tandem. with when it's something for the Alliance. In terms of staying on a radar for something for New York, I would just keep up with what's going on in Playbill or Backstage or any of those trades, or if you're a member of the union, whatever auditions that they have posted. But if you have an agent there, I wonder if you couldn't at least ask them to be looking at theater, or if there is a theater breakdown that comes out that they see, would they at least forward you or forward it to you, or keep an eye out for it for you for a New York
Right.
there is something. I suppose that's maybe another resource that you could use there. Then your second question had to do with remind me.
Film and television projects that you cast.
Our office, I don't work on that much TV film. I stay pretty busy with the theater world, but our office has a huge TV film division, and so and we have an office in LA also now, and so for the last 6 or 7 years. So you can go on our website and see the different things that we work on. But there's a number of Netflix. We have This Is Us, and we have NCIS New Orleans. We're working on Julian Fellowes' new show, The Gilded Age. We have Atypical on Netflix, and there's a bunch of things. We do a lot of the live musical stuff. We did the Into the Woods movie and the Little Mermaid remake movie that we're working on now. And so, yeah, there's a whole TV film department also that I, when time permits, I'll help with things, but I am not the expert in that side of things.
Got it. Okay. Thank you so much.
Welcome.
KP has a question.
Hi, Rachel. Love the glasses. I'm sure plenty of people are going to ask questions that we've all got on our minds. So I just wanted to ask, if you could only give one piece of advice for the rest of your life, every time someone asked you for advice, this is the only thing you could say, what would it be?
I mean, I think it would be like, to an actor, I think reiterating what I said earlier, if you don't book the role, if you don't get the call back, it doesn't have anything to do with your talent. And please hold on to that because it can be hard. And I'm gonna add on to that a little bit, because this came up in a class I did not too long ago, and people thought it was funny, and I was like, oh, okay, I didn't mean to be funny, but I will. I'll expand on it a little bit. But somebody was asking about, like, what's the worst? I know I'm often asked, what's like the worst audition story? Like, what's the most crazy audition story? The answer is, I don't know. I don't remember them anymore. I like to joke that I'm 43 years old now. I like to joke that when I was 28 years old, my brain hit capacity. And now moving from that point forward, I've had to filter information out of my brain that I don't need. And the truth is, I don't need to remember bad auditions. Everybody has a bad day. Who cares? I'm not thinking of your, so what I said in the class, I said, I don't have time to remember your bad audition. But that was what I had said. And so it's, and I think that ended up being sort of a relief to a lot of actors, where it's like, oh, okay. There's no list of bad audition. When I'm going back through old notes, I'm looking at the notes on the people who did well that I put on the list for the future. You can walk back in and I won't remember a thing about your bad audition. So let that be maybe a weight off of your shoulders, that if you mess up, it is fine. Who cares? It happens. You're human. You can move on, and we're not going to remember it in the future.
All right. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you. Heather has a question.
Hey there.
Hey.
Thank you both, Amanda and Rachel. In addition to being a performer, I'm also a vocal coach.
Awesome.
And have begun to specialize in pop rock music, along with, and actually I know Dave Clemens and
He's the best at that. I mean, he's who I learned everything from when
well, and I also have got the training from Sherry Sanders with Rock the Audition, who also has like, she quoted Dave in her book and talked and all that sort of stuff. So, and I believe, as I know Sherry does too, and that more and more and more you're going to see more pop rock type musicals coming down the line. And so, one, there's the question, it's a different switch to get performers to turn off musical theater vibe and turn on that pop rock, 70s music, 60s music, rap, whatever it is. what advice do you have for that, or what are you seeing? And then second, I often have to, I don't want to say fight with students, but particularly when there is a breakdown that says musical theater and the show is very much like Mamma Mia, for example. It's very much a 70s disco song, but in the breakdown, it will say bring 16 to 32 bars of a musical theater song. Instead of going, my advice to them is you need to research the material, research the show so that you know what type of material to sing, but their concern is not following directions.
Okay, cool. I'm going to start with that one. I guess it would surprise me if they're asking for a musical theater song for Mamma Mia. I wonder if something like that wasn't like a cut and paste misprint. Mamma Mia was never one of my shows, so I can't speak to what they asked for in the audition room for it. But maybe they did. I have no idea. I guess if it's that, then there's no reason they couldn't, whoever gave them the appointment. So if the appointment came through an agent, I think there's no reason they couldn't go back to the agent and say, hey, could you clarify with the casting director, do they really want a musical theater song, or do they want a song in the style of the show? Would they like a more, ABBA style song? So I think you can always clarify that if there's some sort of question. My guess is for these pop rock shows, at least in my experience, they do want something in the style of the show, or something that at least, shows, like for the Michael Jackson thing, we said sing a Michael Jackson song or something in that style,
Sure.
and so anyway, so that's the answer to the question. You can always go back and clarify. You can clarify anything you need to clarify. In terms of advice for pop rock, I'm going to say, I will preface this by saying I am not a voice teacher. And so the instrument, I think the first thing for some people, it's a super simple, and they're very good at shifting from a more, classical sound to a total rock sound, and they can do it healthfully and well. And for some people, it's a little more scary and it's a little more difficult, and taking vibrato out of their voice is harder, and adding an airier sound to their voice feels foreign and strange. And so my best advice, and I go back to Dave Clemens and what he used to say. He's like, listen to the original performer sing it, and sing it with them, and see if you can emulate them and how that feels, and getting used to that sound. Another advice with pop rock stuff, pop rock music was written to have a percussion rhythm, like all of those songs that you hear on the radio, there's drums there. When you walk into that audition room, you don't have drums. You have the piano accompanist. And so making sure that the arrangement of the song is not don't just print it off of music notes and walk in the room with it. You have to take it to somebody. You have to make sure, A, that the chords are correct, but B, that the accompaniment supports, or what's being communicated to the accompanist is going to support you in the room. And another thing, so you and the accompanist are going to have to be together on feeling whatever that groove is, whatever that vibe is, that would exist if drums were there. Yes. So I think that's a big piece of advice there, is that what the drums and the internal beat has to be a cooperation, and you and the accompanist really have to be on the same page with that.
Correct. And that's completely different. And even as I am coaching students about that too, it's completely foreign to them. And it is wait a minute, what do you mean? I'm like, you have to communicate the feel of this to the accompanist. And in most situations, particularly regional, not all of them accompanists are going to be as familiar with playing pop rock music. So you need to help them out too.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Of course.
Thank you. Now, Rachel, I have a handful of hands still up, but I don't want to take up more of your time. Are you okay?
Yes, of course. I'll stay as long as you need.
This is so exciting to me that we have so many people on this call and so many questions. Cheryl has a question.
Hi, how you doing, Rachel?
Good.
I'm an actress of color over 50. I'm trying to find out what the opportunities are for Broadway in that, for people like me. do you see anything opening up, or do you have any recommendations for someone in my position?
Yeah, I mean, I think my best advice is to also be checking Playbill and Backstage, and if you're a member of the union, be looking at their website as well and what is auditioning there. Because yes, the short answer is yes, there's opportunities. It sort of depends on if you live in the musicals world or more in a theater world, or sorry, the musicals versus plays, and then if there are, are you open to tours or off-Broadway or regional theater? I mean, obviously you're open to regional theater if you're there. And so I only know the shows that my office is responsible for casting. Those are the ones I'm most familiar with. And so, but there are a lot of shows beyond what we do. We're in a strange moment here where everything is on pause and a lot of things are getting canceled and postponed. And so, the answer is at this moment, none of us have anything that we're casting, active. Well, there's a few things that we're actively sort of looking, hoping, making lists and checking avails and checking interest and seeing, what there might be moving forward. But I think my best advice there is going to be go to the trades to find out what's going on. And because there's audition sections in those that usually have character descriptions, and you can find, there will be more information than I have at those places, I think.
Do you recommend YouTube submissions or just doing little things on YouTube to get attention?
I mean, I would say, if there's a specific show that you're targeting, I would look at who the casting director is and, do a submission, get in touch, call that office and, or send your stuff. And a lot of shows will have an individual email. Like any show that we work on now, we create either a Gmail address or some of them have, their own addresses at the show, at the show's domain. And so I would do a little research. Sure, you can put something up on YouTube or your website or whatever it is, and send that as an example of your work. It never hurts to do that.
Thank you.
Sure.
Carly has a question.
Okay, hi. Hello. Okay. So at the very beginning, you were talking about the merging of creatives and how a person will work with another group of creatives and everything like that. How much goes into that, and how do you create those connections that this person's personality enough that they will merge with that? Does that make sense? I don't know if I'm making sense.
No, I think I know what you're saying here. Yeah. Because I mentioned early on that I felt creative matching talent with material and, creative and whatnot. Okay. So sometimes I don't, the answer is sometimes I don't know. Sometimes I'm getting to know you. Sometimes I'm getting to know my creative team and having to figure it out. Other times, I use the example now of Chris Ashley, who the first time I worked with him was actually back in Dave Clemens' office. I did a little reading with him. But then Memphis was the first big show I worked on with him. And since then we've collaborated on a ton of different projects. So now, and when it came to casting Come From Away or Diana, which was in rehearsals or previews when this all hit, I now have a good idea of what Chris does and doesn't respond to. And it shifts, it absolutely shifts based on the material, I mean, what he looked for in Escape to Margaritaville is certainly different than what he looked for in Diana auditions, because the characters were written differently and whatnot. But now I kind of, we have a shorthand, and I usually have a good idea of what he'll respond to or what he might not respond to. And I feel it's a little strange to say that, because the truth is it's the same as anybody. He wants an actor who serves the material, who serves the character, who serves what's been written first. It's less about I like these kind of people and I don't like these kind of people, as it is a good actor who has made choices, who is clear. And anyway, but then we're getting, for Becoming Nancy, I met all sorts of new people casting that show because it was a lot of younger people, and Jerry Mitchell, who you'll see a lot of people in Jerry Mitchell show go from one Jerry Mitchell show to another, because he's one of those directors also who, when there are people who fit in the world that he's, of the show, and he's comfortable with them, and he knows that they're going to make choices and they're going to be fine and they're going to be good energy and positive and in the audition room or and in a rehearsal room, he'll stick with those people. But and which is great. You want to be one of those people that a director uses again and again and again. But for Becoming Nancy, there were all sorts of new people also, because the show he did before Becoming Nancy, I think was Pretty Woman. He had been working on a lot, and totally different style and age range and whatnot. And so it was tons of new people that we met during that show that ended up in it. So does that sort of answer, am I answering the question that you were asking there?
Yes, definitely. I mean, I guess it's the making the connections without, like, when you go, because I know a lot of times they're like, be yourself in the audition room, but there's only, like, you get scared, so then you start doing weird stuff. So it's like, how do you make sure that you are staying in contact with them without, like, stalking these people who just want to live their lives?
I hear you. You know what? Keep showing up. I know that getting used to what it feels like in an audition room, it's a whole new education. And so keep in mind what I said before. If it doesn't go well, I'm not going to remember it. The next time you walk in, I'm not going to be like, ooh, that Carly girl said open call and it was weird. I have no idea. I do not have time to remember that. So keep going. We start to recognize you. We start to get to know you through those things. If you're a match, then you'll get called back for, whatever role we think you match with, and we'll pre-screen you on material. And I think it's getting in rooms. It's putting yourself out there. It's doing good work when you get into those rooms. That is the goal. Like, some agents will say to people coming right out of school, my goal isn't to book you a job in this year. My goal is to create a fan base. My goal is to get you in rooms with casting directors and make them fans of yours. Even if you're not right for the role, if you do good work in the room, I'm apt to bring you in again, because if you've prepared well, if you make choices, if you're great in the room and you don't get the role, my guess is you're going to be great in the next room too, even if it's not a match. Or if the creative team, if the people making the decisions at the end of the day feel like it's not quite right, if you've still done good work, then it makes me more comfortable bringing you back in other rooms.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you for that, both of you. Lauren has a question.
Thank you both so much for doing this. This is incredible. And I just to piggyback off of the last question, I hear you saying, focus on being prepared, doing good work, and building that trust with you. I'm wondering what other commonalities you notice amongst those actors that you're always willing to go to bat for, will make you proud in the room.
Yeah. I mean, over the years, you get to know people, and you get to know their body of work and their reputations. And so that you can rely on them to be good people in the room. And so I'm not sure I have, say the question one more time. I know.
Oh no, I mean, you've answered it in so many ways. I just was wondering if anything else came up for you, for those actresses and actors that you would go to bat for, that any commonalities amongst people who you've seen just work forever.
Yeah.
Veterans
that no matter, well, I think it's an interesting, this isn't quite an answer to your question, but I think it's somewhat related. I've been on panels with actors, and it's always interesting to hear an actor's story of the moment that they realize that the kind of realization and where it really sank in for them, like, oh, I am not in control, so I gotta go in and do what I can and then not care anymore. There's that, that comes with experience, because of course you care. And it's not a matter of like, I don't care about this audition. It's a matter of, of really letting it sink in. I can only do what I can do. And then it's not up to me anymore. And then it is out of my hands. And Jim Stanek tells a great story about it. Shoshana Bean tells a great story about it. I'm sure a lot of the actors that book things again and again and again, when they stop wanting it so badly and walking into the room with that like need, when they can walk in the room with the confidence and the preparation, and then the like, you like me or you don't like me, and that's okay.
Yeah.
That's sort of when I think a lot of actors are like, and then I started to see the work come more. When that really sank in. And I think it takes a long time, I think, it can take a long time for that to sink in, and for to get used to and to be comfortable with, you got to take me or leave me.
Right.
And that's all you can do.
That non-attachment and lots of meditation, I would guess.
Yeah, it's different for people and how you prepare and how you walk in and what you're able to do. I think it's impossible to just, here's a tool that I think a friend of mine suggested once, or got it from somebody else. But, you go, you do the audition and you leave, and you're gonna go back over it in your head. I can say as much as I want, let it go, You're not going to do that. You're like, you've worked so hard at this. You're going to go over in your head how much, like, oh, I missed that line, and I wish that note was a little more clear, and I didn't take the breath in that place, and so I had to take a breath. You're going to do that. I know you're going to do that. And so it's silly not to. But one actor said, one of the advice I heard once was, I let myself obsess about it in my head for the subway ride home, and when I come back up out of the subway, I leave it down there and I make myself move on with my day. I give myself that 25-minute ride home to be like, oh, and what did I think that, and so obviously it's going to be different in different places or situations, but like giving yourself what you need, because you can't just, the more I say, forget about it, don't think about it anymore, you're going to think about it. And so, but finding those exercises, or like you said, a meditation, some kind of thing that helps you to kind of let something go and move on to whatever is next.
That's amazing. Thank you so much.
Sure.
Maggie has a question.
Hello.
Hi.
This is relating to your funny statement about not being able to remember bad auditions. So much of your job is being able to remember the good ones. And so I wonder, two parts to this question. Do you have any tricks to remember talent? And when you take notes about talent, whether it's from an audition or someone you meet in life, what kind of things do you write down that is helpful to you later when knowing to call them in?
Yeah, that's great. That's a great question. Yes, it's notes, and I am still very much a pen and paper person. There is something about being like writing the words down and not typing them in that glues something for me here. Now, a lot of times I will transfer things online, and that can be helpful also. Or, like in this world of showcases, I a lot of times will take notes, there, and then transfer things to a database that we have. But in terms of, say the end of the question again.
What kind of things do you write down in order that you could look back at the notes maybe 2 years later, and it would give you the information you needed about what kind of project you would call this person in for?
Right. Yes. Okay. So it depends. There's no like secret code that I have. I write, I often write, like if you're singing a song, I write the name of the song and then my notes on that. And a lot of times they're not much more than great, or, sometimes they're much more elaborate. And if I have specifics that I've thought of that I'm like, oh, this moment could be stronger, sometimes I'll go that far. Sometimes I'm worried about 12 other things in the room and figuring out who's coming next, and we're running an hour behind, and so I've got to get the lunch order, so because we're going to work through our lunch, there's always those different things too. The big thing that's helpful, at least at Telsey, we keep track of everyone that we've seen for a role and how far they've gotten in the audition process. And so we've got lists of ideas for different roles that we have. B, lists of all the people that we've seen for roles over the years, and we can use those to cross-reference all the time. For instance, when I was starting to cast Frozen, like the first workshops of Frozen, I was going through the lists of the lists of people that Bethany had seen for certain roles in Hamilton for more ideas. And because that exists, and it was kind of similar to one of the things that they were looking for in one of the roles in Frozen, so we cross-reference, and these lists are like the history of people who have come in. This goes from TV to film to plays to musicals to everything. It's a lot of information, and it's a lot of information that we use over the years. And when it comes to new people, we have a whole database of new people too. And we'll mark certain roles that they might be right for. If we've seen them, we would put, if I meet somebody and I'm like, feels like they live in the world of Fiyero in Wicked, which is one of Craig Burns's shows in my office. Then they go on a list of to schedule for the future, another list that we can reference for, and maybe like for Becoming Nancy, I did reference that because there weren't lists for the role for one of the boys for Maxie. Went through submissions, but like I went through these showcase lists, or these lists of new people that I hadn't met that other people in my office might have seen, and pre-screened those people on those lists because that role was maybe similar to Fiyero or similar to, Aaron in Mean Girls. Anyway, so that is, I think, the most useful tool is the information that we already have, and that I like to say I am only as good as I am at what I do because of the 24 other brains that around me at Telsey who are seeing people for different shows that I might not be seeing. And I have all of the information from them also at my fingertips whenever I need it. And we share information, we collaborate, we work in teams, and it's fun. So is that sort of an answer?
Yes. Thank you both so much for taking this time. Really appreciate it.
So we have a couple more questions, Rachel, and I apologize for taking any time because this conversation is not with me, but one thing I wanted to add that I just thought of, because I think it's as useful for everyone to hear and for me to remind myself, is that some people don't audition well. Some people, it just doesn't get better. You try and you try, and it will get better, for sure it will get better, but it might always be the thing that is the most trying piece of what you do in your life. And David Capareliotis is someone that we worked with a lot at the Iraka group, and I would hear him time and time again with particular auditions say, I saw this person in a show, I'm going to talk to them offline and bring them back in. And I loved that because yes, your life is about auditioning, but that's not the goal. Your goal is to do the work. And the work is the best representation of who you are as an actor, your flexibility as an actor. And I just wanted to just put that in for people to remember that we've seen you on stage as well. And those 5 minutes in the room may not be representative of your craft. And we have seen you on stage and we talk. And so this should only just be empowering. Danielle has a question.
Hi, Rachel.
Hi.
So I have a quick question just about what is the best thing for actors to do right now in this environment? It seems like everything's paused. I feel like I'm just staying put. Should I be submitting for some of these theaters that are still casting possibly for future seasons? Okay.
I mean, yes, sure, get practice may as well. It doesn't hurt. If one person watches it, then it's a success. So sure. If there are submissions and things that people are calling for right now, I would say go for it. Other things to do during this time, everything from read plays and get to know, the shows that are of interest to you and the writers. And I say read the trades. Go back and look at who are the bold-faced names. And I realize right now everything is related to the coronavirus and when are things going to be back and this and that. So go back and read, from a year ago, what was happening at this off-Broadway theater or that theater festival, or, and who are the up and coming writers. When I started getting asked this question, it was not too long after Women's Day on Broadway had happened, like that first week in March. And I went, and there were these great panels, and Hillary Clinton was the keynote speaker. But the next day they came out with 50 women to watch. And I loved the list because it was all of these people. I think it came from, the whole organization came from, or whoever did this list, it came from when Rachel Chapkin did her Tony acceptance speech, talking about there's women out there who are ready. I mean, I think she was talking about directors in that moment, but I think it was beyond that. There are women who aren't being, and minorities and whatever, who are not being given a chance, and they're ready. And so this group started, and this list, it's a great list of everything from designers to directors to general managers to producers to actor. I don't know if there's actors on it, but it's a great list. And so get to know that list, and hopefully, work with some of those people in the future. Get to know the TV shows. I mean, you guys, have a lot of TV opportunity there in Atlanta. There's so much content, and it's again, one of those things, the more knowledge is power when it comes to this industry. Cold read a play with some friends, get on Zoom and assign parts and practice, like cold read a play. Or, for those of you who sing, I say one of the big, if sight reading isn't your forte, I've been telling the college kids, beef up your sight reading skills, because every musical starts with a 29-hour reading. And the big thing that music directors are worried about for the ensemble, they're like, I don't have time to teach this, to spend hours and hours teaching this music. I need them to come in the morning of the first day, and we're going to go through the music that day, and then I need them to know it. And so a lot of music directors are like, I need people who sight read them. So they, and they'll check into it. And I cannot tell you how many people, for those of you who saw Becoming Nancy at the Alliance, Evan Duff is the little guy who played the kid with the lisp. He played the little one who played Oliver in it. Mm-hmm. And Evan doesn't have an agent. I've known Evan since he graduated from Ball State, or during, and Evan I put Evan Evan did Diana Out of Town. Evan did, because I put him in the first reading of all of these shows, because I called his teacher. His teacher said, yeah, he's a great sight reader. And then everybody loved him who worked with him, and they started writing around him. And he was, he showed up, he made choices. If you saw Becoming Nancy, Jerry Mitchell started adding all these crosses for Evan. It was hilarious. But that was because he got that job, and he got in the room in the first place because he was a good sight reader. I put him in because he was a great sight reader. And so, and now he's gonna, hopefully when it moves forward, I would hope that he continues with it. So anyway, that's just another little soapbox I get on for a second about that. But one thing, if you're a singer, you can be doing, familiar, who are the new writers out there? You can do things other than theater too, here's the big thing. I think we all need to be taking care of ourselves in this moment. And by that, I mean, this is a strange time. It's a scary time. For some people, it is, some people it's terrifying, and their futures are, there's a big question mark, and jobs and income and insurance and all of those things. So the big thing is, I think you need to do what you need to do to take care of yourself in this moment. A popular question right now is should I be creating content and writing? And if you feel drawn to do that, I say go for it. But if you are not, don't feel like you have to keep up with the Joneses in this moment either.
Mm.
Don't feel like you are getting behind because somebody else is doing something more creative than you feel like you're doing in this moment. I think the only way that we get through this is if we're really taking care of ourselves, staying inside, doing what we need to do to survive. And so, and that could mean that's going to mean very different things to different people. So I want to be careful that these suggestions that I'm giving, if you're like, I don't even know where I'm going to get the money to buy my meals next week,
Right.
then don't worry about, getting online and reading a play if that's not what you're feeling drawn to do. So just because I don't know the whole audience here, so I want to be careful that I'm not saying anything that is insensitive in this weird moment that we're in either. So I guess my first and foremost, my answer should have been, you got to take care of yourself right now, and then do what you need to do, on the other side of things.
No, that's great. Thank you. And I have a quick secondary question. Visible tattoos in the casting world. How do you feel about that? What is the kind of temperature on that?
I mean, if it is not here's the thing, you just don't want me to be thinking about that instead of your audition or instead of the character that you're playing. So if it fits with whatever character you're going in for, great. If it doesn't, then it could be one of those things that unconsciously I focus on or pulls me out of it, or maybe not me, because I feel like I have an imagination and I can see past it. You'd be surprised how many things like that become distracting to creatives. And so I would say if it's something that you can cover up, use it when you need it, and if it's possible to hide it when it would be more appropriate for a character that might not have it, then great.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it.
All right, we have 2 more questions and it's 3:28, so we might want to try to be brief.
I'll be brief. Sorry.
No, it's not to
I
you.
answered.
No, goodness, I'm thinking about you, and I'm thinking about Hershey, and
got it. Poor Hershey. Yes.
I really have no discipline whatsoever, because it's so dadgum fun. Betsy has a question.
Great.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yep.
Hi, thanks you guys. I grew up in Atlanta. I'm currently in New York City right now though, and one of the things that has arisen from this is that I've been taking classes with former teachers who are in different parts of the country, and I'm wondering, not only for me here in New York, but also for the actors in Atlanta, if you know of any teachers in New York City that you really love, who might be having classes right now, who have consistently been on resumes for people you cast, who might be a good resource during this time.
Yeah. How about this? Can I think about this one, and can I send some information maybe to Amanda on this? Because I want to be careful about recommending one thing over another.
And Betsy, I can
anybody, if you want to send it out to anybody.
I have your email and I can send this to you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Sorry, for anybody who has it,
I understand. Yeah, no, I understand, and we record these, and yes. Yeah.
So I want to, there are certain people that I love, and there are certain people who I'm sure are fantastic that I don't even know about.
Yes.
And so I like to be really careful about that kind of thing, but I will answer your question, Betsy.
Thank you so much. Nikisha, I apologize if I mispronounced your name. I'm so sorry. I hope I'm right.
No, you're absolutely right. Thank you so much, Amanda. Hi, Rachel.
How are you?
I am wonderful. It's really good to see your face. It's been
to see your headshot.
Yes. I just want to say thank you so much for being incredible through the years. You always give amazing advice and feedback, and something that I've been thinking of recently is for a lot of us artists who are trying to keep up with the current trends and market, and especially when you're going through your book and going through your materials, is there a trend that you are seeing? I know they come and go, certain songs get really popular, certain monologues get really popular, but is there a trend that you're currently seeing right now in the business? And also to second that, how do you recommend that artists really keep up with refreshing their books and keeping on top of things that showcase them the best?
Yeah. I mean, I think a book is something, your audition book or, material or monologue, whatever it is, it's probably always evolving, because I think different things speak to you differently at different times in your life, with different life experience, with new writers, with new styles. I don't have an answer to the trend question. I think, I think trends certainly have shifted, and we're in this world of, like the Hades towns and this kind of, I don't want to say mood music, but there's a different feel and vibe. And, I love that album. And so that is certainly different than the trend of where things are going with like the Dear Evan Hansen side of things. So I think it's always going to be shifting, and you're always going to have to be adjusting and doing your best to figure out what in your book matches material. I also think we're never going to, like, Rodgers and Hammerstein is never going to be gone. They're always going to be revived. And so I think we always have to be keeping up with that side of things too. So I don't really have a trend on that. In terms of this kind of leads me, I'm going to answer a little bit of a different question to, sometimes people will ask me, are there any songs on your do not sing list? Or are there things we should stay away from in auditions? And my answer to that is I won't answer it, because my job in the audition room is to evaluate you as a performer and where you might fit in whatever project I'm working on, and all Telsey projects. My job is not to judge the material. So my biggest concern, I want you to be walking in the room at your best, putting your best foot forward, doing whatever you think shows you off best. If it's a little off from whatever I'm working on, I think I'm good enough I hope I'm good enough at my job at this point that I'm like, you know what? It feels like it's the right role. She looks right. It's pretty good. Let's try her on the material, and we can get more specific with that. Then like, oh my gosh, it's so close, but it's not right on. And so like, that's never going to put you in the no pile, I think. So, I know it's not like the exact answer to like the trend question of it, but I think you got to do what you feel like you do best. I think it's, I hope that when you walk in a room, I think it shows when you walk in a room and you love your audition material, like you love what you're singing, or love the monologue that you're doing, but that you're connected to it in some ways. I think that's, it's hard, auditioning's hard enough as it is. So you may as well get to walk in the room and do something you love and sing a song you love or do a monologue you love. So I think that, indirectly maybe shows a little bit. And yeah, it's sort of an answer.
No, it does. That was a great answer to the question. Thank you so much. I really appreciate your time. And thank you, Amanda, for moderating this.
Rachel, this has been fabulous.
Yay, thanks for having me.
I really appreciate your mind and your time. And I know all of us, I mean, the fact that most people who speak on this call, when we say that it's probably going to go an hour, is really a testament.
Oh, thanks for staying, you guys. I'm sorry, I know I talk a lot too, but hey, I've got some time. So
no, I mean, it was riveting, honestly, and I learned a lot.
Oh, good.
So, I'm so grateful to you, and thank you, all of you. I want to sign off. Someone said this to me on the phone the other day, and I thought, oh, I like that. This person said, it was last Friday, the person said, do something nice for yourself or to yourself, meaning, if that is, well, I mean, here in Georgia, we can get a tattoo and go to a massage parlor. Please don't do that. Do something kind for yourself and make a phone call to someone who you think might need to hear from you. So I leave us all with that, and please everyone stay healthy and be safe, and thank you, Rachel, for your
Of course, thanks you guys. Thanks, Amanda. It's good to see you.
time.